absolutely delighted to be here and to welcome you all back from your break. And I think that many of you will agree with me that we can now add toilet queues to trains as our list of societal challenges we should probably look to tackle. So, as Mark said earlier, I'm Jennifer Rubin. I'm the Executive Chair of the ESRC and the Lead for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion for UKRI. This plenary session, which I think is the last of the morning, is about showcasing some of your work and your contribution to our ongoing collective success as UKRI. Ian highlighted earlier how we need to harness and value the breadth of thinking while also working in different and new ways. And as we've already been discussing, we'll be working together ever more closely, harnessing the diverse thinking and talent that we have throughout the organization. So I wanted to just briefly open this session by sharing with you my view of what it means to embrace diversity and inclusion, even as we become one overarching organization. EDI is something I've cared about for really as long as I can remember. And so at its very most high level, at its most basic, I believe that we should all be able to live and work in an environment in which we're enabled to thrive, in which we can make our contribution to the best of our ability, and in which we can be valued for doing so and feel valued for doing so. So that's really the vision. I've always enjoyed working in diverse groups myself, building on the many diverse approaches and perspectives that brings, whether they're cultural differences, disciplinary differences, cognitive styles, and so on. And it turns out that this kind of diversity is also good for the performance of teams. Complex tasks and problems are more likely to be solved when many perspectives are brought to bear. And working in this new way, we certainly have plenty of complex tasks to address, not only in terms of the societal challenges, but some of the systems and processes that we will need to open up and transform, as Ian alluded to earlier. And I'd like to see where and how we can open up some of these systems and processes from an EDI perspective as well. For example, can we have greater diversity on peer review panels? I'm sure we can, and on councils. How can our recruitment processes draw in people who welcome and who bring in themselves new approaches? Well, I'm not going to dwell on all of that now because we're at the beginning of this journey. We are going to work together to find ways to do those things and far more besides. But to provide a flavor of some of the diverse thinking and the wealth of knowledge and expertise across the organization, I would like to now welcome Ian Campbell, who is the Executive Chair for Innovate UK, and who will take us through an example of some of your work. Thank you, Ian.
Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ian Campbell. I've been in post as the Interim Exec Chair for Innovate UK for approximately 4 weeks. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to introduce the Faraday Battery Challenge as part of the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, which is really a government programme to develop cost-effective, high-performance and low-weight recyclable batteries. It's important that we have a focus for this, so the automotive sector provides a great focus with the government's pledge to have full electrification or zero carbon emission vehicles by 2040. So the time is now to try and leverage our strengths in batteries. I believe the lithium-ion battery was developed or invented in Oxford in 1980. Trying to nurture our research in that area to drive products into a market that could be worth £5 billion in the UK by 2025, but more notably, £50 billion across Europe. The challenge is being led by Innovate UK and the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council on behalf of UK Research and Innovation. And it really has two important communities that it's connecting: the Automotive Council and researchers within the energy sector and that are really concentrating on energy storage and energy use using novel chemistries. But why focus there? As I think we're all aware, in recent years, the automotive industry has secured a real resurgence in the UK, and we want to leverage that. There's 163,000 people currently employed in the automotive industry in the UK. And their biggest challenge is the electrification of vehicles and to produce batteries that are small enough, with high enough capacity to power cars for the next generation of electric vehicles. But also at the same time, we have a research community that are looking for new ways to coordinate their work to develop new battery technologies. And this really is a collaborative approach across many disciplines, chemists, material scientists, and engineers, and applying their novel solutions to the problems around energy storage. So one of the questions was, if we're going to develop energy storage solutions, where should we start? And really starting with the automotive sector is probably the most important because of the challenges of creating vehicles that can travel far enough distances at sufficient speed to make our journeys as comfortable as they are today. So therefore, the Faraday Battery Challenge was really grown out of those two organisations, and it really brings together expertise and innovation from not just Innovate UK and ESRC, but across all councils. It's probably fair to say that the challenge today has had something around 100 people working on it across not only Innovate and EPSRC and BASE, but the other research councils as well. So with my life sciences background, what I can write about battery technologies is rather limited. However, I've got the pleasure of introducing to the stage both Catherine Magney and Jackie Murray, who have brought their expertise, their enthusiasm, their energy and their passion to drive this challenge forward, and really undertook getting it off the ground earlier in this year. So can I please invite both Catherine and Jackie? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you. Hello, so I'm Catherine, and alongside Jackie, we are the Deputy Directors for the Faraday Battery Challenge. And I've personally been involved in Faraday since before it was named Faraday, since conception really. And very early in the life of Faraday, Jackie and I both knew that what we were building had to be something that was much greater than the sum of the parts. That's what was going to achieve, this huge challenge and really meet the needs of things like the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund that it was funded by. And really, we just wanted to say a little bit this morning about how, what our key points were in making this happen and why UKRI has been important in this. And I think to build those, build something that was more than just the sum of the parts, I think we really had a view that there were three key aspects to this. The vision, urgency, a sense of urgency, and creating a powerful coalition. Needing to set a vision, needing to describe something that people could sign up to, understood, would work towards alongside us, the UKRI team, to make sure that we all got behind this and could deliver change and deliver something different. Urgency, I think you've heard already that there are key drivers towards the introduction of electric vehicles. We can't wait. The Clean Growth Plan, etc., gives us clear targets that we have to meet. And a powerful coalition. We can't do this on our own. We don't have the knowledge on our own to deliver what we need to deliver. And it's all about developing a team and creating a team around this, so getting a section of people lined up, focused in the same direction and working alongside you to address that challenge, but also working on their own to address that challenge as well. So that team. And I think those things really we think align very closely with the UKRI vision. And just to read to you the UKRI vision, what that is, remind you of that. Being a trusted partner and to ensure research and innovation flourish in the UK by connecting researchers and innovators with customers, users and the public. And doing that starts here. It's being delivered by Innovate UK and the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council on behalf of UK Research and Innovation. And we are a key part of that. Faraday has had to connect with some very powerful influences across the scene. The Automotive Council being a prime candidate there, the automotive industry more generally, their supply chains as well, people in other sectors, aerospace industries getting involved now, and other disciplines as well. A wide variety of people that are very influential, very powerful, and we absolutely have needed to work with them and get them on board as part of this team and part of this message. But what we've also needed is the support from the staff here from UKRI. And we're going to continue needing that as we go forward. And as you think of the challenges that we need to address, moving into other sectors, thinking about cross-sectoral challenges, delivering funds in a completely different way, being creative or innovative in the way that we can do that, and yet sticking to our core principles. You know, competitions, funding, looking at skills and skills investments, and that's really where we draw upon the teams that we have around us in our organisations and across the councils. But Jackie is going to say more.
So it's been a challenge. My challenge this morning is that someone's stolen my script, so you'll have to all bear with me. But it is a festival, hence the flowery trousers. So Catherine's been a pleasure to work with, the team has been a pleasure, but blimey have we had to deliver. And what we've delivered in a really rapid way, and I saw on the Slido questions, I've been reading them avidly, that speed. So Catherine's point about urgency is really important. Actually, it helps if you can take advantage of it. But I think my grey hairs show just how hard it's been to deliver a brand new battery institution called the Faraday Institution. That is a £78 million investment. It's already got £20 million worth of fast start projects underway. And it's laying the foundation and the governance really for actually how we're going to create a new supply chain in the UK. We've also managed to get off the ground and out the door £40 million of round one collaborative R&D money. Round two is just about to get announced, so you heard it here, folks. And that's another £25 million worth of funding. And for me, what's really exciting is in round two, just in round two, we had 89 different applicants. Some that were completely new to batteries, some that had just never worked together. But those consortia, you can see forming that backbone of a new supply chain in the UK for batteries. And then last November, we also announced the £80 million UK Battery Industrialisation Centre. That's close to my heart as an engineer. And as I heard earlier, I have a different perspective on things, which is probably quite true. And that, for me, is where we scale up and prototype and really do something exciting in the UK. But that delivery has been based on the team. So it's been hundreds of people. And I'm really clear that today, and the reason I wanted my script was not really to tell you what I've just told you, but really because it had lists of people that we had tried to come together and think about and make sure they got thanked in person. So I'm going to do some of them. Aha, we found it. At least I've got the names, that's really useful. First of all, what we can also boast is we've actually got a challenge director from industry. What we've got Tony Harper, who is the ex-R&D director from Jaguar Land Rover. And he joins this team alongside Professor Peter Littlewood on the Faraday Institution, an eminent professor in that field, who's moved from Chicago to come here and do this. And he's then alongside a guy called Jeff Pratt, who's just been announced, and he's in the UK BIC as the chief exec. And he's the guy that actually set up the Nissan battery plant, which actually is where the UK produces all these electric vehicles in the Nissan Leaf. So we are so keen, Tony, Catherine and I, to recognise that actually we're probably at the bottom of the pile. We're trying to hold up this big thing and help everybody else deliver. So it's really important I do mention some people. So I really wanted to make sure that the core team were mentioned by name. So I'm looking at Catherine to make sure I don't go astray on this. We have Anna Wise, Neil Ryan, and Luke Davis. Thank you. God, I knew I'd be rubbish at this bit. And they've really helped shape and deliver this program. I want to thank Pila Sepulveda and Siri Mugala. They facilitated the program. And they've kept us on goal and provided that framework that gives us a bit of rigour, which we always need. From comms, we've had Tim Warne and Joe Enderby. From finance, Stephanie Farmer, Hayley Lewis, Joe Trasler, and Leslie Northfield. Thank you, guys. I told you there's a long list. I feel like an Oscar acceptance speech at the moment. To those in the Innovate UK Operations Competitions team, so sorry we've made your life so difficult. Joe Lyford in particular deserves special mention. John Topless as well in capital projects. He's our property and capital guy. He's doing a phenomenal job with us. In evaluation, it's Dan Hodges, it's Jose Argudo, Sue Smart and Sushma Tiwari. Apologies if I get that name wrong. But it's more than that. So reading those comments earlier, it made me really keen to make sure that those of you in HR, those of you who have helped us recruit, those of us you that out there that actually pay us, those of you that make sure we're not all sardines in Polari's house, or at least trying really hard, you're massively part of this. We wouldn't be here without you, so you're massively important, so thank you. There's other people like Tanya Cottrell and Simon Gardner and Nurk, who, you've been involved in very maybe small parts, but you're very important to us. Your knowledge, your input, we're really keen to hear it as we move forward. So just to finish, thank you all. Thank you for sitting there listening to us today. Thank you for your help. Thank you to Catherine, who has been my partner in crime right the way through. And I hope you'll join us, if you haven't felt involved, to make a real difference and bring together that UK battery supply chain. Thank you.
So I hope we now feel that we're a little bit more informed as to the complexity of pulling together these great challenges. At this time, I'd also like to introduce Melanie Wellham to the stage, who's going to introduce another environmentally friendly challenge that faces us all in looking at how we build enzymes to degrade plastics. Melanie.
Thank you, Ian. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Executive Chair of BBSRC, Melanie Wellham, and I just want to talk a little bit about probably one of the biggest media splashes that's come out of discoveries that's been supported by UKRI funding in the last few months. And this was a story about a plastic-eating enzyme which really hit the headlines across the world in April this year. This piece of research was studying an enzyme which was isolated from a bacteria that was found to be growing in a landfill in Japan, and that landfill was full of plastic waste and plastic bottles. So what these researchers wanted to do was to actually study that enzyme to understand how it was enabling that bacteria to live under those quite extreme and unusual conditions. This was a really interesting international collaboration. It involved 3 different countries, 5 different institutions, and was supporting researchers both in the UK and in the US. And BBSRC was contributing funding to the UK team, and the National Science Foundation in the USA was supporting the wider research effort in the US. It was also interesting because it crossed disciplines, and it brought together structural biology research, but also capability in the form of some very specialised infrastructure at the Diamond Light Source at Harwell. And it brought also together people working in the area of industrial biotechnology who were very interested in applications of enzymes such as the one that they were actually studying, and how this could really start to make a difference in the world. And it was very interesting and very timely, actually, that when the UKRI board visited Harwell in January, one of the pieces of science that featured was the work that had been carried out there to look at the structure of this novel enzyme. And John McGeehan, who is the lead investigator on the UK side from the University of Portsmouth, was there talking about his discovery, a plastic-eating enzyme. John Kingman, the chair of the UKRI board, thought that this was a fantastic story, said, why aren't we publicising this and making the most of it? John McGeehan said, I need my paper to be accepted first, as is kind of the standard practice for science, peer review. But certainly we knew at that point that when it was, that this was an opportunity to really showcase some of the work that UKRI has been supporting and will do in the future. So what was the discovery? So they discovered that the enzyme that allowed these bacteria to live in these quite extreme conditions had evolved so that it could degrade polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, which is, I'm horrified to see the number of plastic bottles actually that are around the room that are probably composed of this plastic. It doesn't degrade in the natural environment, but this enzyme enables the bacteria to degrade and eat that PET plastic. They also discovered that this enzyme can degrade other types of plastic, including PEF, which is polyethylene furan 2,5-dicarboxylate. My chemistry has not gone amiss, which is actually a bio-derived replacement for PET. And so it opens up the whole possibility that actually, rather than these plastic bottles, carpets, clothing languishing in landfills for years, we now have some tools that will enable us to degrade these plastics and to be able to reuse them. And this is a massive problem, as we know, and we will hear a little bit more about. So we've kind of got the building blocks, and actually the team were able to demonstrate that they could make this enzyme that degrades the plastic even better. But what we now need to understand is how we can actually scale that up so that it can be used as a novel, a new way, a new solution to this plastic recycling problem. So it's about scale up and industrialization, and that's the work that needs to be done in the future. I think this is a fantastic example of interdisciplinary international collaboration. And I'm going to invite Colin Miles to tell us a little bit more about how BBSRC has been involved in this and how we've enabled this story to actually reach across the world so that people can understand the value of UK research and innovation. I'll invite Colin onto the stage now. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Melanie, thank you for the introduction. So my name's Colin Miles. My role is to be the head of strategy for industrial biotechnology in BBSRC. That sounds really grand, doesn't it? Okay. So what's that all about then? Well, it's about developing strategies which support the science and technology which is going to underlie the manufacture of materials, chemicals and energy in the future. So we've talked about carbon and manufacturing carbon and energy. These are the processes that we're going to need to use in the future. And it's particularly with emphasis on biological systems that will enable that to take place. And that's why making and degrading plastic is actually a very attractive proposition to me. It's a very interesting example. So this particular area of research was really directly controlled and relevant to the type of work that I'm undertaking. Now, I thought I'd try and answer the question about the roles, if you like, by just going a little bit around the story as such. Now, it became a global phenomenon, of course, but that didn't just happen by chance. There was a considerable amount of effort applied, particularly by our BBSRC communications team, to make that wider attention. But I guess the question is, why did it cause such a stir? So what was it about this particular project that made it such an attractive proposition? And why did news stations around the globe try and pursue people like me to give interviews to talk about why this was important? Well, I think I would undoubtedly be connecting this with the people's awareness of plastic waste in the environment, and that was so well publicised in the BBC Blue Planet 2 documentary. And I imagine that's probably the strongest reason why there was such a level of interest. And of course, it did bring about the question, what are we going to do with all of that plastic waste? Not just in the oceans, but around on the planet generally. Now, I think the discovery of an enzyme that was capable of depolymerizing or breaking down that plastic, which provides a very nice solution, if you will, a potential solution for a very environmentally friendly way of recycling. And in the paper, there's described a series of experiments where they attempt to change the activity of the enzyme. They succeed in doing so, but not in quite the way that they were thinking at the time. But what it does show, of course, is the potential of that enzyme to be improved, to have its performance improved over time, which means it does have the potential to be used as a plastic recycling enzyme. Now, I think that also caught the media's attention, and consequently the public was very interested in the type of work being undertaken. Now, that also happened at the time that our investments through UKRI were reaching a potential where we were talking about the ability to manufacture at a large scale biodegradable plastic and bio-derived plastic, as well as the emergent area of interest in the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund on zero plastic waste. So there were lots of reasons why this story converged to make it a really important and actually a global phenomenon. Now, you asked the question of what was my role in all of this. Well, I guess my role was quite a small one, really, but I like to think it was quite an important one too. So I tried, when I was approached about the story and asked about how we might present this to the media, it was suggested that we would be, that this is the potential solution, if you like, to international plastic pollution problems. But I decided that the important thing was to take a more responsible line and be realistic about what the capability of this discovery really meant. Well, whilst it was undoubtedly a novel discovery, there's a world of difference between taking a piece of research which worked successfully in the lab to actually making it work at a global industrial scale. And so the idea of approaching the media was to try and make sure that we made that clear. We're supposed to be a trusted and responsible organisation, and I like to think that was a component part of what we made clear in our interactions with the media. Now, not only do we experience serendipitous studies in the lab, and the redesign of the enzyme and the accidental discovery of an improved form was one example of serendipity, but there's also a story here about serendipity in terms of our approach to the media. So we, like many things in a complicated world, teamwork is an essential component part of the success. Now, the story itself was developed by Jules Granville and her team in BBSRC's communications team, but we also had successful engagement with the Diamond Light Source communications team as well. And that was aided and abetted and supported by the UK Research and Innovation communications team too. So a big thank you to all of the people who were involved in those collective teams. There are two other elements of thanks that I'd like to give as well. In the actual support of the grant proposal itself when it came in, and how it was successfully peer-reviewed and the resources allocated to it, so the work could be undertaken in the first place, we'd like to thank the BBSRC grants teams involved in that, particularly those in Committee D who did all of the hard work to bring this proposal to bear. And then finally, I'd like to say a little thank you as well to the people involved at Diamond Light Source. So these are the beamline scientists, those people who make sure that the experiments work and the data is collected, processed, and we benefit from the structures that they generate. They've made an important contribution here, and I'd like to thank them very much as well for their work. So I hope that's given you an understanding, an idea of where we've made a difference. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Colin, and I look forward to actually following this story as it starts to evolve even further, because I think it is really exciting. I'd now like to hand over to Mark Thompson, Executive Chair of STFC. I think he's going to talk about robotics.
Something like that, yeah. So thanks, Melanie. So I've got the pleasure of introducing what I think is a great example of translating fundamental research into addressing a real-world problem. So RAL Space is one of our research departments at Rutherford Appleton Laboratory on the Harwell site. It carries out what is undoubtedly world-class research in space and in technology development for space. And amazingly, it's been involved in over 200 space missions. Now, one of the areas of research that RAL Space is involved in is planetary exploration, and that includes both the technology, development of technology, and development of vehicles for planetary exploration. So think of Mars rovers and clever sensors. So if you think about Mars rovers and or other remote vehicles, they have to be autonomous, they have to work on their own, nobody's going to help them. They have to be robust, you can't fix them easily. They have to be highly maneuverable, they have to negotiate difficult terrain, and perhaps most importantly, they're packed full of really clever sensors. So what the RAL Space team realised was that this technology platform could be used to address a major real-world problem. Now, it's shocking, in fact, that there are an estimated 110 million active landmines around the globe, mostly in developing nations. And the mapping and the clearance of these minefields is really a major problem for many countries. So what the Rail Space team did is they actually obtained UK Research and Innovation funding through the Global Challenge Research Fund to actually develop an idea, still it's a development stage, to actually use its Agritech rovers to map minefields. Effectively, what we're trying to do is deploy robotic vehicles where people fear to tread. So the idea is relatively simple. You deploy unmanned vehicles with clever suites of sensors which can detect chemical explosives, combine those with remote sensing in a later version, and what this has the potential for doing is actually make the whole process of landmine detection, well, obviously far safer, that's very important, more accurate, very important as well, and actually perhaps most important, given the number of landmines out there, is make that process much faster. So I have the great pleasure of actually introducing Rain Irshad to talk about this incredibly important and exciting project, and she'll give you a few more details about the team.
Thank you very much, Mark. So this all began a few years ago when I was lucky enough to be in Cambodia. And I found that there were live minefields in amongst their major tourist destinations, and also right next to where children were living and playing. And that really stuck with me. A couple of years later, I took over the robotics group at RAL Space. And our team there had developed these small, lightweight rovers for agriculture. So these are based on technology we'd developed for space, for the validation and verification of planetary rovers. But I realized that they'd be the ideal platform for detecting landmines. Now, this project is a RAL Space-led collaboration that brings together colleagues from Fardulis Robotics and Cranfield University to define a multi-platform sensing system for landmine detection. So our unmanned aerial vehicles would come in, they would map the area, and they would detect chemical signatures of explosives. This would then provide initial information for our rovers to come in on the ground and detect the mines. That information would be relayed back to demining teams to clear the area. This is an amazing opportunity for us to apply our space technology in a way that impacts communities on Earth. And a major goal of this project is engaging those communities on the ground in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And we haven't had the opportunity to work in international development before. And it can sometimes be difficult to demonstrate how important space exploration is to communities back on Earth. And this is a clear example of what can come out of the work that we're doing. So, a fortuitous side effect, if you will. Plus, the adaptation of the technology that's needed for this project can again be fed back into our space instruments to further improve them. So, for example, an ideal application on this side is resource detection for mining of asteroids or the moon. So there's constant iteration happening there. As you'd expect, this is a multidisciplinary project, bringing together experts in systems engineering, in mechanical design, robotics, and international development. We have a fantastic group of people with a diverse set of technical skills, and they have a proven track record in delivering robust, reliable robotic platforms for hazardous environments. I'm very excited to be leading this project. And it's also a great opportunity to thank the team. So Stephen Kay, our technical lead, and Wayne Tubby, our mechanical engineer, for their invaluable contribution, their enthusiasm, and their support. Our legal and financial experts, Nicola Gotthard, Joanne Metcalf, and Caroline Gore, have also been instrumental in setting up the project, as has our project controller, Derek Vokins. So thank you to all of them, and thank you to you for listening.
Well, thanks, Rain, for this absolutely inspiring story. I mean, I think this is a really great example of, as I say, translating fundamental research into to address a really, really important problem. So on that note, I'll hand back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you all for those stories. We've heard some great examples already of collaborations and contributions that are making a real difference to the world. I'm now going to introduce a project that's looking to improve the mental health of students. This is an area that you'll all be aware, I think, has received considerable attention recently. Previous research has tended to investigate mental health in UK undergraduates, and understandably so. It's widely acknowledged by the sector that there's also a problem in the postgraduate research population. But until now, it's been very little understood what were the very specific problems that might be faced by postgraduate students. So Research England commissioned the first specific piece of research into the well-being and mental health of postgraduate research students in the UK. The aim was to find out what mental health support is offered by higher education institutions, to provide insight into the factors that were specific to this population, and to make some recommendations for interventions. The research concluded that students do face unique challenges. They face difficulties with their supervisor relationships, they face financial worries, some of them face harassment, and feeling isolated or inadequate. Some postgraduate researchers can also find themselves working in a long hours culture with pressure to deliver to a very high standard. So with this, HEFCE, now Research England and the Office for Students, as part of its Catalyst Fund, awarded 1.5 million to English universities in March 2018 to improve the support for the mental health and well-being of postgraduate researchers. Many of the recommendations from that commissioned research are being addressed now by 17 projects funded under the Catalyst Fund. And Research England and the Office for Students are still working together now to continue to deliver this important programme of work, to support the funded projects, evaluate the projects that are funded, because we need to learn about them, and to facilitate the sharing of best practice across the sector for the benefit of all postgraduate students. There are, of course, many organisations involved in this programme, but I'd like to welcome Claire Fraser now, who will give us a bit more information on her involvement on this piece of work.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the introduction. So my name's Claire Fraser. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in Research England. And Research England has a few roles, one of them notably funding English institutions. But also we aim to engage with universities and understand the universities and what practice they have, and also then use that understanding to drive policy and to drive change. So one of my pieces of work, alongside some of my other policy areas, is to work in terms of policy on postgraduate research students. And it was clear to us, and actually one of my predecessor, who might actually be in the audience, she's now working at BBSRC, spotted this problem that actually undergraduate student mental health and well-being is not well understood, but there's some focus on understanding the problems and the issues that students face. But actually, we know very little about, specifically in the UK, about the problems that postgraduate research students are facing. And so what we did was we commissioned the piece of work from VTI, and quite early in that process, we determined that more should be done, and more should be done immediately. So the HEFCE at the time, obviously we're now Research England and the Office for Students, HEFCE at the time set up a Catalyst Fund, which was a fund of 1.5 million, which has been allocated to 17 projects based in universities in England, which address some of the problems which actually the report is raising about social isolation, harassment, the relationship with that supervisor being so key to the mental health and well-being of those students. So a lot of my role in this, actually I'm in the position where I've picked up this piece of work. I haven't been involved from the off, but now I'm kind of developing and shaping going forward what we can do to share some of the best practice that's coming out of the work that we're doing. But a lot of that is about the communications that we have. So what we're doing at the moment is we're setting up some, facilitating some workshops with the 17 projects that are funded, so that they can spot where they're trying to address the same issues, and they can share some understanding and the early findings from the projects. So we're helping the institutions to talk to one another. But we're also commissioning some evaluation work, which will aim to kind of test whether the fund itself met its aims and objectives, but then also to share some of that good practice for those institutions that bidded and were unsuccessful in the bid. And so we want to help the whole sector, and we want to create something useful for institutions in the UK, but also much more widely than that, to help this student population. So I suppose thinking about kind of the people that were involved in this work, which is why I'm here to talk to you today. We've already heard that we've had collaborations with organisations such as Universities UK, Student Minds, which is a charity, and there are lots of people working in this space. So part of our role in terms of deciding where to fund was to set up a panel, and that panel of experts decided which projects to fund. And the VTI project that we commissioned had a steering group as well, and that steering group was filled with experts in this field and people who are kind of delivering support services to students, all the way through to creating and developing policies in Universities UK, such as the whole institution approach to mental health and wellbeing. So I specifically wanted to thank some of my colleagues and colleagues across UKRI. So they're the people I'm going to mention, name drop now. So Kate Turton, who I've already mentioned, who is my predecessor, it was one of her ideas to focus on this piece of work. So thank you, Kate. I don't know if you are in the audience, I won't make you stand up. And then I'd like to thank Stephen Hill, who's the Director of Research Policy in Research England, and Steph Lynch, who is now on secondment within UKRI, who was delivering quite a lot of the work working with VTI on the commissioning project. I'd like to thank Jo Jenkinson, who's the Head of Capability and Skills at MRC, who was involved in the steering group for the project on the VTI work. I'd also, slightly strangely, but I think it would be unfair not to, thank some of our colleagues in the Office for Students, because we are working collaboratively with the team in Office for Students on this work. We have a joint interest in postgraduate research students, quite rightly so, and I think this is an absolutely fantastic opportunity for us to show how we can work collaboratively with our partner in OFS. So I'd like to thank Matt Jennings and Laura Mailer, who are the OFS project leads. I'd like to also thank David Sweeney, who was involved in the setup of the project itself, and also kind of involved in drafting the call to institutions for the funding. I'd like to thank Tamra Jones, who was actually previously at NERC, but she's now the Research England Communications Manager, and she's been enormously helpful in terms of publication of the report that VTI completed. And she's been working with Tristan Russell, who is based in AHRC Digital Project Manager, who's been really involved in the setup of our website, so I think we should thank him too. I've got obviously lots of other people involved, so people from finance who are funding the institution's projects. Also my direct colleagues Jeff Hill and Louise Wall, who will be helping me in the ongoing evaluation of this work. And finally, I actually spoke to the Research Careers Network across UKRI earlier this week, and we're hoping to work together in the project going forward as well. So thank you all to everybody who's been involved. I'm sure that it's all something that we can get behind and we're incredibly passionate about. We want to support the students and we want to help the talent pipeline for going into research and innovation in the UK and beyond. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much, Claire. Nearly there. This is clearly an important and very complex issue to address, and it's one that goes, of course, well beyond the student population. Approximately a quarter of the UK population is affected by mental health problems at some point each year. And in addition to the human cost, of course, there's the economic and social cost of mental illness in England is estimated at 105 billion. So we've heard about a range of different types of projects, all of them important and interesting and exciting, in fact, in their own ways. And we'll be tackling far more in the years to come, from antimicrobial resistance to the future of work in a world of expanding AI and automation. These challenges will, of course, necessitate medical and technological advances, but we also need to better understand the psychological, the social, the economic, demographic, cultural, and behavioral drivers of many of these phenomena. Because understanding these can help work out what kinds of solutions will improve outcomes and save costs. For antimicrobial resistance, for example, the solutions are new antibiotics, but not only new antibiotics, because we also need a better understanding of the poor practices that contribute to the development of resistance, and how we can change behavior and create systems that will stop us ending up back in the same place soon after new drugs are in use. We need to understand how mental health and health relate to economic performance to help make progress on questions about our productivity puzzle and about what work means for people. Ultimately, these new ways of working will require that we have the humility to understand that our own knowledge bases are important, but partial, and to have the curiosity to listen to what everyone else has to bring to the table. And we'll also then need the creativity to draw fields together in new ways. And we'll need to do this systematically and in a sustained fashion to address many of these challenges. And bringing the councils together under UKRI not only enables this, but it makes it our habitual modus operandi. And of course, this will require a talented and diverse research and innovation landscape. What we've heard today are just a few of the hundreds of examples of your excellent work and the contribution that we can make to the economy and society. I personally think it's an incredibly exciting time to be a researcher, a funder, an innovator, to work in UKRI. And it's an exciting time to work together, whether in research, innovation, finance, legal, HR, communications, or beyond, because we can't do this work if we don't have the budgets and the management to make sure it gets done properly, or if we don't have the people recruited who are going to be the best at what we're doing. But I certainly look forward to working with all of you in whatever functions you're working in order to help achieve the outcomes and impact that the world will be watching for in the years ahead. Thank you.
Right, this is the last presentation. I'll need about 5 minutes, so please bear with me because there's some really great, fantastic photos to show you. We've seen some fantastic examples of the work there as well. The battery technology is enormously important, and on plastics, and I'm not even going to try and say what it was, Melanie. Clearly, I've got to sort out the queues in the canteen and sort out the coffee cups as well, so I'll do that. But I hope it's brought home to you some of the fantastic values that are being demonstrated. And on that subject, I'm now going to announce the winners of the UKRI-wide photo competition, where we've invited people to send in photos. We gave a brief. Lovingly, you've interpreted the brief in a nice, broad way. There were 63 pictures have been sent in. They have been peer-reviewed and judged by an independent cross-council committee. And the 4 winners, and we'll congratulate them all at the end of the 4 if we can. The winner for innovation is Chloe Hayward from the Industrial Biotechnology and Bioenergy team in BBSRC for her picture of a light bulb blossom. And she says that my image represents the UKRI value of innovation, with the light bulb representing the generation of novel ideas, both scientific and also strategic, in relation to funding innovative initiatives. And the flower inside the bulb representing new ideas are able to blossom and grow. The flower also represents the beauty of nature and plant biology, which relates to the council I work for, which is fantastic. For collaboration, the winner is Helen Dewberry from the UKRI India office. That's fantastic. And she's done a picture of an Indian lock. And she says, one of UKRI's priorities is to nurture our many international collaborations. The UKRI India team works to unlock partnerships and support UKRI through Indian collaborations. Moving on to integrity, it's actually her colleague in the UKRI India office, Daniel Shah, who has sent in this picture of, I think it's the Trimurti. This is a 6th century giant stone statue displaying 3 aspects of Shiva as one entity. So for Daniel, this signifies our unity while retaining our distinctive characteristics, and that came up in questions, reflecting that we are now more than the sum of our parts. And finally, for excellence, the winner is Jasmine Rennie from the UKRI Future Leaders Fellowships team, and she's done her picture of perfect balance and stability. Excellence can come in many forms. How the skeletal structure of this mighty whale is held securely in place by each individual wire, creating the perfect balance and stability for it to float gracefully above the millions of people who come to see it in all its raw and natural glory. To me, this image in many ways shows how each individual piece to this structure can come together to form excellence. And that is a fantastic thing if you're in the Natural History Museum to go and see. It really is quite incredible. So well done to everyone. Thanks to everyone who's also submitted. Thanks to the judges. We're not going to get people up on stage now, but we're going to be in touch regarding your prize. And this is the sort of thing we, and as the executive, want to spend more time getting more things fed back from you. So look, just as a roundup, we hope you found today useful. We hope that you have learned from it. I think there's been plenty of questions, and we clearly will answer all of those questions. I think there's been lots of good stuff from Mark's presentation about really why UK research and innovation now is the right moment. Now is a moment where research and innovation really can power the industrial strategy, and we will need to be pioneering and creative in all sorts of ways. I think we heard, we need to do more with STEM. We need to do more on equality and diversity and inclusion, and there's lots of things that we can work on. For those of you who have time this afternoon to go to the exhibition or the sort of festival, I think you'll see some absolutely fantastic things there. We've got all sorts of spin-outs and our close partners showcasing work. We've over 50 people showcasing everything from antibiotic resistance and robots to sustainability, music composition, and biodiversity. So thank you to everyone in the team for making this happen. Thanks to Mariki and her team of some 50 volunteers who have helped to make the day and what it is. Our speakers and everyone in the change networks who have helped to shape and deliver the conference. But thank you to all of you attending, whether in person here or in the institutes or the centres, wherever you are. If you didn't have a chance to ask a question or get an answer today, please keep putting questions onto Slido. We will answer them. But thank you very much and enjoy the afternoon.